none of the things I've been through, I feel, really have formed me. I feel we're formed at a young age, and then things that happen along the way add to what we're doing.
You have to find the tools that are good for you, that really work for you. Not everyone wakes up the same every day. Some people really are morning people. Some people.
Oh. And that's hard to believe. But you'd say you'd save your mum or sister or brother or dad immediately. But some people wouldn't. When push comes to shove, they don't, because it's scary and it's a big operation. So I'm very, very thankful for the fact that both my parents, all three of my brothers, I had friends step forward as well.
So Ottilie, when you hear the phrase, I got back up, what does it make you think and feel?
I guess it really just makes me feel that you're still alive. You still got to crack on. If you fall down, it just means that you're still here. You're still on the path to whatever it is you're wanting to do. I don't think of it as a negative. Even like before all the things I've been through, I've got three older brothers. I think I've just been taught to kind of carry on. So I guess that, British mentality of just, you fail forwards per se. I was a teacher for many years, and I'd say to my students that you only learn by failure. You don't actually learn by making everything right and correct all of the time. So falling down, I guess it's like if I had to visualize something, I think of like a punch bag that's weighted at the bottom, and you punch it and it just comes back up and it goes, come on, let's go again. And it goes and you go again. So for me, it's just something that it doesn't really faze me.
Mm.
I do sometimes think, well, what next? If I'm perfectly honest. And sometimes I smile and think nothing more can possibly go wrong. Mm. But then I also think it's not really wrong. It's just something else to jump over.
Mm. Another hurdle to...
Yeah. I kind of think if you're plain sailing, you don't experience much in life at all, do you?
No, and I agree with that. I do agree with that, because I think that if it is all plain sailing and you haven't experienced, let's say, some sort of darkness in whatever capacity that might be, or, the punches, you don't really know how to fully experience and truly understand the light.
Yeah, for me, I remember quite vividly, I was in hospital once and I was having a blood test, and this young phlebotomy nurse was taking my blood, and she said to me, oh, it's okay for you. You've had your life almost taken from you, so you understand. And I looked at her like, what? Do I have to get to a low to really feel a high? No. I think you shouldn't have to go through something to feel good. You shouldn't have to go through something to see what you've got. I guess some people take for granted because they've never had any adverse negativity. So I'm a big sort of believer in, like, people say, are you different since what you've been through? No, I was probably an arse before, and I still am. I was always fairly positive. My mum used to say to my teachers that she wakes up enthusiastic, she goes to sleep enthusiastic. So none of the things I've been through, I feel, really have formed me. I feel we're formed at a young age, and then things that happen along the way add to what we're doing, if that makes any sense.
It does. Do you think the things shape us, though?
They shape us, for sure, but I also think that you're either a negative or a positive person regardless. You look at nature v nurture, and I think you could deal with something one way or another depending on how you are. I don't think you can change who you are regardless of what you've been through, but that's just maybe my thought process.
No, it's definitely an interesting one. I think there's probably lots of different ways. There's lots of different ways to think about that. I think that I understand what you say when you say you're either a positive or a negative person, because I think when some people are very negative, they are very negative, and there's obviously a lot of positivity as well. I think it's the way of figuring things out and, really thinking things through.
Yeah, definitely. When you're presented with an issue or a problem or something you got to figure out, you come across these people in life. They're either straight away doom and gloom, or someone else will just be like, come on, let's go. Okay, we can do this. And so obviously it depends on what you're going through and what the issue or problem is to find out the solution. But like I say, a lot of people say, oh, well, what you've been through, it must have made you who you are. And I was like, no, because I feel that who we are is more or less been brought about by your surroundings, your family, your friends, who you were when you were younger. And regardless of big major life events, I think all those little things form you. You know, who your best friends are at junior school, and I don't know, who you meet on a plane, and all of these things, because, and how you speak to someone, rather than these big, grand, explosive moments. Yes, they help you, but unless you're how you are before, that's how you act, if that makes sense.
It's your character that gets you through things.
For sure, 100%, 100%.
And I think I do think that a lot of people are, or most people, or maybe even everyone, is a lot stronger than they may ever realize and may ever know. And I think sometimes people don't even find that strength, but I think it is inside everybody.
Oh, I mean, like, if people haven't experienced adverse issues or problems, then perhaps they haven't. And, you know, maybe they're the lucky ones, I don't know. But I kind of feel I get I get told that a lot. Oh, you're lucky what you've done, you're lucky where you live, you're lucky what you do. But I don't think any of it is luck. I think all of it is hard work and perseverance and just persistence and resilience getting through things, because all of the things you come up in life, you know, do you let it stop you, or do you let it make you?
Hmm.
So
I always say you've got two choices in life. You've either got the choice to let it stop you, to fall as a victim, to be like, this is me, this is it, or to take it on board and, really run with it in a way.
oh yeah, I mean, and like a lot of people I know will wear something as like a medal or a badge, and that defines them and that identifies them, and that will always be them. Whereas I like to kind of, I don't know, metamorphosize, I guess, into different things and have different hats on.
Yeah.
You know, so one moment I'm this, and the next moment I'm that, and you know, I'm someone different to different people. You know, different members of the family and different friends, and yeah, rather than just, oh no, that's that person, that's who they are.
Mm.
I don't think that's right. You need to kind of not change, but just adapt to the situation and who you're talking to.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And then it's over to you then. I want you to take everybody
Oh,
listening or watching, take us to the beginning of where most resonates with everything you've been through and who you are today.
well, I guess like going back and being born with three older brothers. I was actually born on April the 1st, so April Fool's Day, and my mum really didn't want me born then. So I was born at home. Anyway, I was born with kidney disease, and I didn't know till I was 24 years old. So when I was 24 years old, I was a teacher at a sixth form college in Luton in England, and I was going for a regular checkup at the doctor's, a contraceptive pill checkup that us girls have to do I think it's every 6 months. And yeah, it was a routine day in a busy college day where I was teaching sort of 16 to 19-year-olds. And I always say to them, you know, they're students growing up, and I'm trying to tell them what to do and obviously do it the same. So I'm off to the doctor's. I didn't really want to go. It was a lunchtime. And I had my blood pressure taken, and it was through the roof. And I'm thinking, yeah, I've just driven through a really busy Luton town centre,
Mm.
park in Sainsbury's, run across to the doctor's, my blood pressure's high. Anyway, the crux of it all turns out I needed a blood test and further tests, and I was diagnosed with end stage kidney failure all of a sudden. So from going for what was just a routine check, I needed a blood test. I was told I had 9% kidney function, and they told me I was only born with 20%. So for 24 years of my life, I only had 20% kidney function out of 100%. So yeah, that happened back in 2006. And yeah, it was a huge shock, absolutely huge shock. The kind of the saving grace, let's say, or the experiences we've been through, was my dad was my uncle's kidney donor in 1986. So, and that's what we talk about, like learned behavior and what you understand as a child. And when in 1986, I was 4 years old.
Mm.
So I knew my dad had gone to London for some big thing. We didn't really understand what. I just remember I got a rainbow bright purse, which was like a big character, cartoon character. You're too young for this, but a cartoon character that was really cool. And my brother got a He-Man sword or something. But we were told that my dad would do something really great for my uncle. We didn't really understand what, but we then knew he had this massive scar and he was my uncle's donor. So that will be 40 years ago. He's actually the second eldest kidney recipient in the UK at the moment. So when I heard that I needed a kidney transplant and it was a more than likely the same disease that he had, I straight away thought, well, if my uncle can do it, I can do it.
Mm.
from good stock. But then it meant that my dad could not be my donor. So immediately, I'm the youngest, I'm his only daughter. He wanted to save me and he couldn't. So that obviously brought about some issues as well. But my three older brothers and my mum all stepped forward straight away. They were like, we'll be a donor. So
Mm.
immediately, when I was diagnosed, I think it was like December 2006, in Lister Hospital in Stevenage. We then were talking to different specialists about who would be my donor. And it was basically a 9-month workup to get my mum's kidney. We went with my mum first, purely because transplanted kidneys tend to last 10 to 15 years. They're not a cure, they're just a treatment. And it's a better treatment than, say, dialysis. But I was given 6 months to live. So we worked my mum up first. She was 57 at the time. She thought she might be too old. And my three older brothers, we found out my eldest brother, Benedict, was the wrong blood group. He was A positive, I'm O positive, so uncompatible. My youngest brother, Maxwell, found out he was only born with one kidney, didn't know. So that was a huge shock. So nobody knows unless you check how many kidneys you have. You should have two, but you could have one, or you could have three, or you could have four.
Really?
Yeah. Unless you're tested. I mean, do you know what blood group you are?
No.
Probably not. No, exactly. So I didn't know until I needed testing. So a lot of these things you just don't know. Anyway, my middle brother Elliot. He's compatible, and because he didn't have any children at the time, we were concerned that if he had future children, they'd have the same disease that I've got and that my uncle's got. So we kind of wanted him to be okay in case he needed to be a donor later. And also, I laughed, and we've been brought up into football, and we laughed and said that he's on the bench keeping warm. So he's my super sub that I hope I never have to bring on. But my kidney will be 19 years in me in August. My kidney's 76 years old because it was born in 1950 in my mum. She's like, stop telling everybody my age. I was like, I'm only telling people the age of my kidney. So yeah, so I got in August 2007, I got my mum's kidney at Adam Brooks Hospital in Cambridge. So clearly that was a massive life-changing thing. And yeah, I was a football player at the time, playing for Luton Town ladies team. And football, like I say, being the youngest of four children and three brothers, was my everything. And they told me because my new kidney was put in my lower abdomen, they don't actually put it where your kidneys are. So your kidneys are in your lower back, transplanted kidneys are in your lower abdomen. So not too far from your tummy button. They told me I can never play football again. So going from like third national league to not playing ever again, I was like, wow, what do I do? And at the time, I was actually completing a diploma in treatment of management of injuries for the FA up at Lilleshall. And so I became a football physio and worked in men's professional football. So just before the transplant, I did some work shadowing there for Luton Town, the men's team. And then after the transplant, I went back to be a teacher, but it just didn't feel the same. And Luton Town offered me a full-time job with the men, and I could live vicariously through those guys. And be like the girl around the football ground, the training ground, because the only women in football then, this is like 2007, were like admin ladies or in the kitchens or, very stereotypical females. So I had the guys coming in speaking about their girlfriends, about their injuries. Obviously we're dealing with injuries, but I kind of felt like the little sister or the big sister, obviously depending on how old they were. So yeah, I was in football for 3 years, and then I decided to get into cycling, and that's kind of when my world kind of turned upside down with cycling.
Just want to ask them before we get into the cycling and your world turning upside down, did you have any symptoms? Or I mean,
Oh,
I wouldn't know obviously if there were symptoms.
looking back, I had every single symptom going, but when you're like I say, I taught A-level PE for 16 to 19-year-olds.
Mm.
I played National League football. I did the gym 3-4 times a week. So I was doing like every single day. But every single day I'd get in from work. And my ex-husband at the time, I would go home and fall asleep. And this would be like 5 o'clock till if I was out training for football, if I was going to the gym. So I'd call it a power nap, like most people say, or a cat nap because I love cats. And I just thought that was me. I just thought, I'm busy, I'm full of energy. That's what happens. I was drinking maybe 3 or 4 liters of water a day. When I was doing some teaching, I'd hand out some like A4 pieces of paper, and I used to shake a lot. I shake a lot still now, but that's the medication.
Mm.
But with the disease, I was very yellow, so kind of like jaundice, but different because jaundice is linked to livers, not kidneys. So I had a very kind of washed out look, very tired, shaking. I thought, if in all honesty, I could be diabetic because the amount my sugars would drop and I'd need something instantly sugary.
Mhm.
Um, and so when it all kind of came together, I thought this kind of makes sense. It makes sense that I sleep a lot and I'm drinking a lot of water. I didn't drink alcohol. I wasn't very good at it. And that kind of makes sense as well, because at university, if I'd go out and drink with my friends, I'd get wasted too quickly. And that's probably because my kidneys were shot to pieces. So yeah, looking back, there were typical symptoms, but of course you don't
Mm.
relate them to anything if you don't have an idea or a clue.
Yeah, when you have absolutely no idea what's going on inside, a lot of the things that you were saying, yeah, would almost sound like just training a lot, needing a lot.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting. So you wouldn't necessarily equate that to what was going on.
No, no, not at all. And then once I was diagnosed, then things got really kind of strange because like my diet changed. I wasn't allowed certain foods with kidney disease. You're not allowed any sodium or potassium, which is pretty much in everything. So potassium is in everything: bananas, tomatoes, potatoes, anything you think is good, you can't have. Obviously, sodium is just salt, which is fine. So you have less of that. But all of the good things, all of the bright fruits, all of the things that you think is really good for you, the vegetables, you can't have. So you then have a very bland, beige diet. And of course, that doesn't help. So obviously, nutrition is very important in health. So I tried to exercise. I couldn't really walk. Sounds silly, but I couldn't produce urine either because my kidneys weren't working. So I'd sweat a lot. And I don't know, it's similar again to diabetic people, that when they have a low, they get very sweaty all over themselves. And I had this very peculiar smell, like a sweet. It wasn't awful, but I could smell it. And so I just sweat all over my arms, not like typical places. And that was the way of my body getting rid of all the toxins because I couldn't really produce urine because my left kidney had just gone. It was just diseased. And my right kidney was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And like I say, during transplantation, they don't take a kidney out to put a kidney in.
Mm.
And so 9 months after my kidney transplant, I got my native right kidney removed. So I had the kidney transplant in 2007, August. 9 months after, in 2008, I had a nephrectomy. So when people say about, oh, giving a kidney is harder than receiving a kidney, well, I've had both. And back in the day when my dad gave my uncle a kidney, it was open surgery. So he's got this really gnarly big scar around his tummy. And when we went on holiday, he'd always say to the other kids, like, that's a shark attack, or that's where I keep my money, or and we
That's where
thought,
I keep my money.
yeah, we were like, he's our hero, man, because he just had this really, like a big worm. They didn't do a very good job on the stitching, but obviously no one cares because he saved my uncle.
Mhm.
Whereas with my transplant, it was open surgery across my abdomen. And they were saying to me, oh, we'll try and make the scar neat. The surgeons were really, really mindful. And I said, listen, I couldn't give a crap. As long as you save my life, I do not care. Scars tell a story.
Yeah.
And so then when I had my original kidney taken out, I had like quite a few smaller scars. It's a laparoscopic keyhole surgery.
Mm.
And now I look like a bit of a patchwork quilt because I've got quite a few scars. But yeah, so that was all like absolutely mind blowing. But since the transplant, um, like the day after, they, like most surgeries, they try and get you up and out of your bed. But of course, you're connected by so many machines, and the things they kind of skim over things in hospital to tell you or not tell you. And one of the main things is they get rid of your immune system, which so for the first 3 or 4 or 5 days, you have no immune system. So imagine having thrush in your mouth and it's just completely white and all your friends and family are popping in, but they're not allowed to stay long because of the whole immune system thing. And they're bringing you all your favorite foods and favorite drinks and you can't taste any of it. And my mum was in the bed next to me because she was my donor.
Mm.
And I didn't want to see her in pain and she didn't want to see me in pain. And all the medication, I think I was on something like 36 tablets a day at the time to stop the kidney rejecting. I'm down to like 12 a day now. So It's all of the other things that go with it. A lot of people's perception is you have some form of transplant, whether it's kidney, liver, lungs, heart, bone marrow, stem cell, and you're fine. You're fine, but you're not. It's a constant. And I know Andy Cole or Andrew Cole, the ex Newcastle Man United footballer, he's had a kidney transplant. And I don't know about now, but I know he was struggling to come to terms with all of the treatments and all of the medication and this whole gratefulness. Because I don't feel, and this sounds really wrong, and your listeners are going to hate this, but I don't feel grateful. I feel thankful. And I think those two words are very different. Like I was born fit and strong, and I've always exercised, and I've always eaten well, and I've always looked after myself. But this whole I'm grateful for this and I'm grateful for this, and no, I'm very thankful. And like I say, I don't know why, but I feel there's a massive difference between those two words. I didn't want to be born with any of this. I didn't want to have to put my mum through a major operation. You know,
I get that. So what do you, because that's a really fascinating point. What do you find the differences between grateful and thankful?
so thankful is like I get to live. I don't get to live a second chance. I just keep living. So my mum has enabled me. My mum said to me, she created me. She wanted to fix me,
Hmm.
and she didn't want to have two of her children in hospital. You know, one saving me. She didn't want to see two of us ill. She was there for my dad when my dad was my uncle's donor. They're no longer together. They're both remarried, so she could see what he'd done. And for me to both have parents as live kidney donors is, I don't know how many people in the world have that. Both parents, you know, being live donors. You know, so for me, I'm thankful that we have been brought up in a way that you can rationale in your mind that you can save someone, because many families won't be donors. And that's hard to believe. But you'd say you'd save your mum or sister or brother or dad immediately. But some people wouldn't. When push comes to shove, they don't, because it's scary and it's a big operation. So I'm very, very thankful for the fact that both my parents, all three of my brothers, I had friends step forward as well. That I'm thankful for. I'm thankful that every single day I get to wake up and be where I am. But I kind of think grateful is this kind of, I have to thank a bigger being, or I have to really, I don't know, be under the microscope of what I do every day. No, I'm just been put on the pathway of what I was put on. Shouldn't have to change. You know, I shouldn't have to be more spiritual or more religious or more. That's how I feel the differences between thankful and grateful. Thankful, just carry on living as best I can. Grateful, I feel like you have to go above and beyond. I don't know. I don't know if that makes any sense whatsoever.
It does make sense. And it's interesting because I guess I've never really heard someone explain their differences between the two. That's why I asked you, because I think a lot of times, yeah, they can be quite a similar word, but to hear
Yeah.
they can. And I
No, no,
think,
they are, and that's
yeah,
why I just think they are a very similar word. But whenever like, so the other thing is, so some people, I'm surrounded by people who have organ transplants because of my racing on the bike.
yeah.
And so lots of people I know have been saved by people who've died, and they might have died in a traumatic way. They may have, well, mostly traumatic, or could be something else, but they've saved that person's life by losing their own life.
Mm.
And there's different ways to look at it. And those people always say they're grateful. And for me, I just think, but you're letting someone else's body part live on forever in you,
Mm.
and it's given them a legacy, and it's what their wishes were, you know, as an organ donor.
Mhm.
Um, and when you've got given a organ from someone who's alive, as I say, I don't really say this that often, but the guilt that you can suffer could be immeasurable, because you feel every single day, am I doing the right thing? Should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? But actually, no, that's why you're thankful, not grateful. You're just, you know, my mum wouldn't save me if she didn't love me, if she didn't want to. I didn't pressurize her into doing it. I didn't pay her to do it. You know, she's my mum. So yeah, it's lots of things that go with organ donation that people don't think about.
Yeah. Have you experienced guilt then?
Of course, yeah. Like when my mum's not well, you know, she had pneumonia and was in hospital for 3 or 4 weeks a few years back, and I didn't think she'd survive. And I thought, if she had that extra kidney, would she be okay? Of course, she'd be, you know, no different, because being an organ donor, you actually become one of the fittest, strongest people that survives, because you go through 9 months of rigorous tests. So it's kind of survival of the fittest. If you fail at any one point, and the hospital can fail the person, the donor, on something they won't even tell them about. So if they feel there's an inkling of pressure or undue hesitation from the donor's point of view, they'll say you failed a fitness test. They'll say you failed a split function test. So the person who gets through all of the tests, my mum had to do a fitness test, and she's like, well, what do I have to do? They said, bring comfy shoes. So she bought these massive 5-inch heels to go on this treadmill. She's like, that's what I'd run to the bottom. I was like, go on, mum. So, with a red lipstick and a red nail, she was always dolled up. So I do feel guilt if she's not well. And I also, the other side of it, I see with my uncle, with my dad, if he's not well, my dad's now got prostate cancer. But would that change if he had 2 kidneys? No, of course it wouldn't. But it's things like this that ordinary, everyday people probably won't have to think about. And it's like the things like the long-term medication I take every morning and every night. And that's actually caused cancer twice for me on my mum's kidney. So very few people have experienced cancer on a transplanted organ, and I had it twice. So I've had open surgery 3 times now. And that's because it's the medication I take to stop the kidney rejecting, which is like a double-edged sword. I take it to stop it rejecting, but I've taken it, and in 6 years after the transplant in 2013, I experienced my first cancer. And then again, my secondary cancer in November 2020, which is obviously the height of COVID. Mm. So I've had 3 major open surgeries in the last, 18 and a half years. So it's never easy. So when you say, what do you do when you get knocked down? I don't know any different, to be honest. I don't know any different.
I understand when you say about the punch bag and you hit it, it goes down, it comes up, it goes down. I've had people say it before, and I do see it when it's like you're throwing punches and it's can you just keep taking on the punches?
Sometimes you think you can kind of duck them and, sway, and you get hit a little bit. And I think sometimes the hits kind of help to reassess where you're at. Yeah. But I have to go to hospital it depends. At the moment, I'm going every 2 to 3 months. Usually I get 3 or 4 months to check the kidney's not rejecting. But of course, the longer I go on, the more chance of rejection. So kidneys, like I said earlier, they only last 10 to 15 years on average. I'm now coming up to 19 years, and my kidney's 76 years old. So it's basically this ebb and flow of just being scared. So I've had a lot of issues with my medication since December that have caused different gut problems because I'm on antibiotics every day, immunosuppressants every day, prednisone, horrible steroid every day, and a few others. Like I have aspirin, and on the box it says to prevent death. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll take that. So all of those medications, when I'm a physiotherapist and people come for treatment and they say, oh, I'm on antibiotics for 2 weeks, and I go, oh. And I've been on them for 18 and a half years every day to stop my disease. Because I still have the disease. I still have kidney disease. I just don't have the kidney disease in mum's kidney. So I have to fight it to stop it coming into the kidney.
Otherwise it could,
and then it could reject, and then I need another kidney. And my other concern is, like, the longer I go on and the older I become, then the less likelihood of getting your secondary or second transplant. They just put you on dialysis. And to me, dialysis is no life. Okay, is it better than dying? I don't know. When you speak to people, it's 3 times a week minimum, 4 or 5 hours at a time on a dialysis machine. You're limited to 750 milliliters of fluid, so less than a liter of any kind of fluid in a day. By the time you get to hospital and back, you're looking at 6-7 hours of every time you go, and you can't exercise, you can't do things because you can't drink. So it's this kind of, I'm trying to put dialysis off as long as I need to, because at the moment, touch wood, Poppet, my kidney, my mum named her Poppet because apparently the 7-hour operation meant they just popped her in. It was that easy. So, excuse me, apparently it was that easy. But no, Poppet, I hope, will last a lot longer and kind of competes with my uncle for more than 40 years. I'd love my kidney to become 100. I'm terrible at maths, but that's, 24 more years.
And I mean, I don't know, can a kidney last
My,
that long?
to be totally honest, I think my kidney could probably last longer than I can.
Wow.
That is the harsh reality of things. Yeah, I've got like a nuke-proof kidney here. She's unbelievable. You need to be doing a podcast with her, not me.
Yeah, I should actually. I'll give her the microphone.
She probably talk more than I do as well, because my mum does talk more than me. Don't tell her that.
And then I just want to ask, with everything you've explained before we obviously get onto cycling, how 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 do you get through every day?
Wow, it's a very, very hard but good question. Just take each day as it comes. I've got lots of tattoos. Every year my kid and I do well. As a celebration, I get a new tattoo. And one of them is my logo with my initials, OQ. But above it, it says Poc a Poc. I live here in Mallorca in Spain. And a phrase I use all the time is Poc a Poc. But they say Poc a Poc, they say it like a chicken. And it means little by little, step by step. And I think I had that tattooed not long after I moved here as a kind of mark of respect for being in Spain and being in Mallorca because they speak Mallorquin, not Spanish. So when I go to hospital, this is my blood arm. So they see poc a poc, and then they have instant respect that I try.
Mhm.
And this is my life every single day, poc a poc, little by little. I take it on the chin, whatever comes at me. If I'm feeling tired, I have chronic fatigue. If I feel tired, I just take my time. You know, unless I have an appointment somewhere, or I have work, or I'm guiding people on the bike, I have a sleep. You know, I rest. I think I'm in the best place for it with the Spanish siestas. But I try not to be harsh on myself. I try not to be my biggest, hardest critic, which I normally am. And people don't get it. They joke and they laugh at me saying, "Oh, you're no good in the mornings." I'm like, well, you know, when you've got like 42% kidney function, like I have now, and I'm still taking a barrage of cocktail of drugs, you know, until you've lived in someone else's shoes, you shouldn't really, disrespect them. And I know no, it's only in jest, but for me, sometimes it can be a little bit harsh. So yeah, poc a poc, little by little, every day. I see what comes up, and I try my hardest to eat well and drink plenty of water and exercise and get the sunshine and get the old circadian rhythm right and go along the beach to work because I live right by the Mediterranean. So I'm trying to get all of the things, all of those pillars of health, all of those kind of things that create your worldview correct, if I can. Oh, my cat has just come to say hey. She don't want to miss out.
I like Pock a Pock because I say little by little, day by day,
Yeah,
step by step. But I like saying it Pock a Pock. I like that.
yeah, yeah. So poco a poco is Spanish, pero poco a poco is Mallorquin. And I, up until probably the last year or two, I've never looked further than a year or two in advance in my life.
Mm.
I've never had long-term goals. Um, there's an acceptance speech by Tim Minchin. I don't know if you recognise Tim Minchin, the name. He's an Australian comedian, ginger hair, wild beard. He actually wrote the musical Matilda and if you look, it's an acceptance speech from the University of Western Australia,
Mm.
and he talks about having long-term goals. If you have long-term goals and not short-term goals, you miss the sparkly things in the periphery. And so for me, I want to see the sparkly things. I want to go day by day and really appreciate the small things. And having my cat come and sit next to me right now, even though it's a billion degrees and she's molting everywhere, that makes me smile more than big grand gestures.
You miss the sparkly things. It's
Yeah,
I really like that one too. And you're right, because if you are so focused all the time on long-term goals and the end result, the journey, the finish line, the top of the mountain, however you want to phrase it. I mean, I know it's very cliche, but you genuinely miss the journey along the way, and you miss all those little things, glimmers, whether it's your cat sitting
every
next to you, you miss everything
absolutely everything exactly.
because you're only so focused and just one direction, looking at like one way, and you miss everything else that's coming towards you and around you, even the way the sun shines through your window in the morning, or the sip of your coffee. You miss everything else when you are just so focused on the end result.
But I also think, what happens when you get there?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
You're putting yourself so high up, and we see it now with lots of celebrities and sports people, and particularly in the UK, we're very good at putting someone on a pedestal and knocking them down.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why. And that's why, again, I like the Spanish mentality of, support and celebrate everything.
Yeah.
If there's a local supermarket opening, we go to the opening. If there's a local bar, or we help everyone. We're a community. Living here, I feel like the 1980s growing up, where you'd know everyone. Whereas when I visit the UK, it does feel different. And I'm not here to slag off the UK because I love it. And I'm from Luton and I love it. And I visit as much as I can. But for me, it's about health and well-being, and being somewhere that helps my lifestyle, and hopefully gives me more life. But, you know, the small wins is what life is about. And I think when I worked in professional football, I had to get the footballers to understand that, and even then we were in the championship with Luton at the time. We were in a time when, excuse me, we got relegated because we got put into administration. We were fined minus 30 points. Where the legal guys in, it was just 5 backroom staff and all of the footballers. And we were like, look, guys, let's take every day at a time, and they were on decent money. And I was on probably what I earned in 1 year. A lot of those guys earned in 10 days.
Mhm.
But for me, it was passion. For me, it was passion over paycheck. It was doing something that would make myself proud and my family proud. And like I say, living vicariously because I could no longer play football. But every day I'd go into the football ground, go to the training ground, and these players would be, oh, I've just come from an ACL reconstruction. I can't play. Look at that. I can't do this. I can't. I'm like, flip it around. What can you do? What can you do? Hey, yesterday you couldn't get your leg out of your Bentley, right? I've turned up in my crappy, Renault, whatever it was. You couldn't get your leg out of the Bentley because your knee was so sore. Today, did it hurt? No, no, not so much. I was like, okay, you can't play football yet, but you can get your leg out of the Bentley and put it down, and when you try and reach up for the spice jar, can you get the spice jars out the cupboard, and can you put deodorant on? And the footballer just looks at playing football and playing 90 minutes. And I'm saying, look, you need to break life down into smaller chunks, more manageable. Tick, tick, tick. I've got a whiteboard here with all of the things that visually I put up to show that I'm completing things and looking for things to do.
Mm. A lot of people, when they ask me about my recovery after my knee surgeries, they always ask me how long it took, and it just made me think about the
Too
point.
long.
Yeah, that it did, but it just made me think about that point, what you were just saying, and there is a time frame I put on it from when I could really run, etc. I ran a half marathon, so when that's kind of where I say the recovery, and really, I guess, was the time frame, but. I started to think about the little parts of the recovery as well when you were talking just now. And you know what? They weren't little when I look back, they are gigantic. The first time I could tie my shoelace on my own because I could physically get into that angle and I could reach it. Because there
Yeah.
was a period where I couldn't reach, I couldn't bend my leg to a point where I just couldn't tie my own shoelace. And I remember the day.
It's a very euphoric moment, isn't it?
Yeah, and the
You
way it
know,
makes me feel right now, for some people that sounds small, but when I look back, actually, it's a huge part of my recovery because I couldn't tie my own shoelace for a period of my life in my 20s. Physically, I couldn't. And then one day I could do it again. I could just about very loosely do it. And I was
yeah.
like, this is the best day ever.
Yeah, yeah. It's like the last time I was in hospital for surgery was, like I said, it was in November 2020, and it was in London because here in Spain they couldn't do the operation. They said we cannot operate on a second cancer on a transplanted kidney. We're going to have to just leave it. I was like, what do you mean you're going to have to leave it? I don't want the cancer to metastasize and go into another organ or a neighboring tissue. So I contacted my surgeon who previously operated on me in Oxford and said, you must know like a young Padawan or protege, someone, who can fix me. And he's like, yeah, sure. Professor Tim O'Brien in Guy's in London. I was like, okay. So this guy's on the phone to me, and I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do surgery. And he's like, most people are scared. I'm like, I'm not scared. I've done it twice before.
Yeah.
I know what to do. I know what I need to do. As long as you know what you need to do, I'm there. And I look at it as sport. I look at it as I'm bringing all of the tools in my armory. You match up. And like I remember I was on the intensive care ward or intensive care unit in Guy's Hospital and had Ethel. She was my my nurse. And I was like, right, Ethel, me and you, love, we've got 9 things to get out of me. And she went, Ottie, it's day one. I went, how long am I here for? I was supposed to be in hospital 10 days. And I was in intensive care. I was supposed to be for 3 days. But because COVID was so high, they wanted to get me out of intensive care onto the ward and then back to my dad's house as soon as possible. And so I was counting and I was like, right, okay, I've got a central line in here. I've got arterial line here. I've got a catheter, a drain site, whatever it was. I had 9 things. I said, well, you can't take this out yet. I was like, okay, well, take that out. She's like, well, no, I can't do this. And so I'm like, right, come on. And she was like, oh, God, you're like the worst person. Because each day I wanted to say, well, today, day one, I've done this. Day two, I've done this. I was doing TikToks on the ward, getting them filming with me, because I just wanted to get up. And each day I was thinking, right, I think day one, I didn't get out of the bed or I could sit up. Day two, I think I did 10 steps. Day three, I was on a regular ward and I went up and down the ward as many times as I could. My surgeon said to me, you can't ride a bike for 100 days. So I came back to Mallorca, I think 2.5 weeks after the operation. And on day 31, I sent him a tweet saying, you did say 31 days, right? And he's like, 100 is not 31. I said, I'm less dangerous on a bike than I am walking. So I was doing like 18, 19,000 steps. And I was like, bugger this. I need to run my bike.
Sounds like me with my physio. I remember after my second surgery, after my ACL reconstruction, and I had very specific set weights I was allowed to do with my squats, and I wasn't allowed to go much heavier. And it got to the point where I didn't tell my physio that I had gone heavier, and I could
Yeah.
do it. I safely checked myself, and I remember when I look back, I had gone slightly heavier, and then I turned up to physio one day, and he was like, "Right, you can start getting heavier now," and I was like, "Oh, can
Oh, okay.
I?" I was like, I was like, I did about 2 weeks ago.
And you're like, stop it. This
Yeah.
protocol is in place for a reason. And you're like, well, the thing is, it's guidelines. It's guidelines. I go into hospital now and I say to my brothers, it looks like the Star Wars bar. Everyone looks like death warmed up. And I kind of bounce in like Tigger, like, hey, hola, and they were like, oh, God, here she is. So everybody is so different. And I think
Yeah.
you can't compare yourself to someone else. So, just compare yourself to who you are now, today, not tomorrow, not yesterday. And I think that goes back to my pock thing that, some days are really good. Some days I do lots of things, and other days I think, oh my God, I'm completely knackered. I can't do any more, and that's okay as well. And like I say, it's been 19 years, and I guess probably only the last maybe 3 or 4 years I've understood that, which is really harsh. I have a friend here. She's from Holland, and she came up to me in the middle of Lidl randomly. She said, hey, you're Ottilie Quince. And I was like, excuse me? She went, you've had a kidney transplant. I went, you what? And her husband knew of me from something he'd read. And she was on the waiting list to have to have a kidney transplant. And I didn't know her. And we just met up and had a few coffees. And she liked cycling and running and things. And I looked at her and I could see what I was like. She was very yellow. Her teeth were all furry. Her eyes were just I don't know. Just when when you see an animal and an animal is healthy, like glossy coat and sparkly eyes. Humans are the same. We look washed out. We look grey. We don't have that spark. We don't have that energy. And she looked the same. And nobody explained to her the different things. Like they hadn't explained that when you have a fistula fitted in your arm, your neck, or your abdomen for dialysis, what the repercussions are. So you have to have an operation, and then you're basically increasing the blood flow to one area, and blah 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 blah. And I said after dialysis, you're only allowed a certain amount of fluid, or before, and so she was on a very very strict diet of water of liquids, and she didn't know that the kidney was put where it's put, and they failed to tell her all these things because to a surgeon or a doctor or nurse, it's immaterial, but to the person receiving it all, you wake up with a kidney in the wrong bloody place. Now what's it doing there? And so she was like, oh my God, I get a choice. Do I want it on my right side or my left side? That's why I didn't get a choice. I said, they tend to put it on the side you're dominant because you protect it more. So, walk around Sainsbury's and you get your right arm out because you're more protective. Like when I sit in the car, my mum, she's automatically puts her arm across me because when we were kids, the seatbelts didn't like properly retract. So you're driving with my mum now, and she'll just be like, "Bang, Mum, what are you doing?" So it's this innate kind of thing. So I said to her, "Look, excuse the phrase, I'm going to swear, it's a mind fuck.
Mm.
Learning life again, learning to take medication, learning that one medication will cause another problem to take another medication." And so she said, she's really thankful to have me to talk to. And to be honest, I'm thankful to have her,
Mm.
because even though she's like 5 years post transplant now, and one of my best mates, he had a liver transplant like 32 years ago. And we can jest and joke with each other, like, "Oh, get over it. You've only had a liver transplant," or "You're feeling a bit poorly." Whereas someone else will say something like, I get people say, "Well, if you change your diet, you'd be fine." Like, excuse me? Well, if you went to a health retreat in South America and didn't talk for 3 weeks and paid that, I'm like, what? The people don't understand it. So it's nice to have people that
Mm-hmm.
you can really, I guess, empathize with and joke with, because I think that's the biggest thing that's got me through everything is comedy and humor and just trying to laugh.
Yeah, well, if you don't laugh about things, you just cry, really, don't you?
Yeah. I cry as well, but
Yeah,
good tears, I think, is better than sad ones.
yeah, no, I get that. And I think also alluding to what you said at the beginning, just because someone else has, let's say, gone through something and they're getting day by day, they're getting through day by day how they are. We are all built differently, and just because something works for someone else, it may not necessarily work for you. And I think that's why it's an important point to note, actually, because we are all very similar, but we're also very dissimilar. And you have to find you have to find the tools that are good for you, that really work for you. Not everyone wakes up the same every day. Some people really are morning people. Some people
Oh,
are not.
I don't get those people, and I never do. And people say to me, "Oh, you're a night person." I'm like, "No, I'm a kind of a midday person. I peak at midday. Before and after, I can't really tell you what I'll be like."
Exactly. And
Mm,
um because we are actually all so different. Someone can sit there and go, well, try XYZ. Fair enough, go try XYZ. But
yeah,
if XYZ doesn't work for you, again, it's cliche, but don't give up, because there is a different way that it could work for you.
yeah.
And there's different tools that you may not have even discovered yet. You just have to sometimes really go and find them.
I think also as well, I've always said this, and many my coaches said this to me, and I say it to my footballers, that be the scholar of your sport, or be the scholar of your disease, or be the scholar of your injury. Learn absolutely everything you can learn about what it is. Because when you go to hospital, you'll meet a young Doogie Howser, a young doctor who wants to change everything. They want to make an impression. And I'm like, whoa, 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 what are you doing? And oh, well, we'll just change this and we'll just change. Why? Show me the data. Tell me why. And they must hate me. I'm like, listen, like recently they wanted to do a kidney biopsy. And my doctor in the UK, I still keep in contact with, and he's amazing. Shout out to Chris Lawrence. That he said, why do they want to do a biopsy? They've got to put a biopsy needle to take a part of your 76-year-old kidney out. And the response was, we want to have a look. And he went, "You don't want to have a bloody look, see, have a scan, an MRI, a CT, or. And he said, you don't just do that, because then you're opening yourself up for infection, rejection, all of these things. But if I was just a regular, normal person who doesn't ask questions and go, oh, okay, that sounds really good. You're the doctor. I don't mean to be like, I don't want to be arrogant or an arse, but I think question everything,
Mhm.
and like make them do their job. Like I want people come to me for physio, go, well, why you asked me to do that? Why should I do that? Why are you saying don't up the weight? And then when I tell you that, this could happen or that could happen, you'll go, oh, okay, that's why.
Mm.
And it's even more difficult in a different language as well. So I'm trying to like learn the terminology in Spanish, and it's just like, whoa, this is muy complicado. It's really hard.
I'm a questions person, and I remember when I sat down with my surgeon, and we met for the first time, and I sat in the room with him, and wow, I had a flood of questions about knees. And he just literally looked at me and was like, "You've really done your research, haven't you?" And I was like,
Yeah,
"Yes."
and why
Anyway,
not?
back to the next question.
Yeah. And how long will blah 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 blah? Yeah, and that's what it should be. Ask the whys, because otherwise you're just dismissing the potential, hazards that are going to come up.
Yeah.
I think you've got to question absolutely everything. Um, But yeah, that I guess that's just me being quite stubborn as well. That's a big characteristic of mine. It's not a good thing, but
I like asking whys because I think you learn so much more than you realize when you just ask why. Even whether it's playing a sport and someone tells you to do a specific movement or I don't know, perform something in a specific way. If you go, okay, but why? I think you then register it more and it actually helps.
well, and then I think other people. I always say, like when I was a teacher, no question is a stupid question because I had 32 18-year-olds in my class. One of them else was going to be thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
So if one of them has got a question, more likely six or seven are thinking exactly the same. So the questions are never stupid, they're never dumb, and challenge that, professional person to their job.
Mm.
And they should be going, okay, I'm ready for this. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you the ifs, the buts, the whys.
hmm hmm Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So then I just want to now move on to cycling, and you said how well, I mean, it completely changed your world.
Yeah, I mean, like when you're passionate about a sport and everything about you, like I say, as a young child growing up, I was dragged through football. I think I went to my first Luton Town football match at like 4 or 5 years old. Um, my dad would like put me on the barriers to watch when it was standing only, and then when you're told you can never play ever again, it's like, well, what next? What next? And in my mind, I was super scared of having a kidney transplant, but I was also thinking my life's going to change after this because I can no longer play football.
Mhm.
And football was I go watch them play on a Saturday, I play on a Sunday, I train twice a week. It's the camaraderie, the constant kind of cohesiveness with your team and your players, and it's an identity. It was part of what it was. And in 2008, in my recovery, the Beijing Olympics were on, and I was watching the likes of Laura Trott and Bradley Wiggins and Mark Cavendish and Joanna Rousel and Sir Chris Hoy. Sorry, Sir Bradley Wiggins, I should say. I think Mark Cavendish is a sir now too. And I was watching all of those guys, and I was like, "Wow, this looks amazing on the velodrome." And I was in the middle of planning my wedding, so I got married in August 2008, and for a wedding present, my dad bought me a bike, a road bike, and I was just like, wow, yeah. So one of my dad's best friends owned a bike shop, and he was like, I can get you a bike from him, blah blah blah. Anyway, um, that's a whole new story. My ex husband was an alcoholic, and he blamed me for being an alcoholic because of my kidney transplant. And when we went for our divorce, he wanted my bike. He wanted half of my bike. So I had two bikes. I'm like, I'm not splitting my bikes. Now I've got a bike shop and many bikes there and 11 bikes in my living room. But um, it became my new identity, or at least a new identity I could relate to.
Mm.
So I started cycling, I started training. I'd heard from my uncle about the British Transplant Games, which is kind of like you represent your hospital at this big sporting event, like a mini Olympics, I guess.
Mhm.
And so I represented Addenbrooke's in my first ever bike race in Bath. And I won both my races, the time trial and the road race. And I qualified to race for Great Britain in 2011 in Sweden. And that's when I won my first world championships. And since then, I've raced in 39 races and won 38 races. Um, and cycling is pretty much, you could cut me in half and see Luton Town and football and cycling. I'm like a piece of rock. So yeah, cycling has become another form of my identity.
Mm. I mean, that's absolutely amazing. And I guess obviously it shows when something is taken away from you, even if you don't want it to be, you can go find something else.
Yeah, I mean, I just touched on a bit of addiction and addictive personalities, and I think we all have it, whether we're addicted to being lazy or addictive to the wise, and whether it's an addiction of alcohol or something. I guess I was addictive to being a belonging, and
Yeah.
I addicted to sport. I wanted something to train for. I wanted something to aim for. I wanted the why in my life. I don't understand people who don't take part in sport. I don't get people who don't run and swim and cycle. What do they do with their time? I don't, I couldn't just watch sport. I need to watch sport, take part in sport. I want to be crap at sport. I'm terrible at some things and really good at other things. But I love the challenge. I love trying to be good. Um, and I think that's the kind of, like I say, the small addictive personalities in what we do. And I think everyone has a bit of OCD or this whole ADHD thing. I think you could label everybody with it,
Mm.
because we all have our quirks and things that we do every single day that form who we are and our pure psychology. And so for me to I didn't get rid of football. I just became more of a spectator. And then obviously working as a physio, it gave me an insight into football even more. And having someone like Mick Arford was my boss, who's like, you know, he's since gone through prostate cancer, and he's a big character in football. And he's the only player Vinnie Jones ever was scared of. And this guy's massive. And he said to me one day, I'm not paraphrasing, I'm quoting what he said. He said, "Ottie, you may have a pair of top bollocks, but you're one of the lads." And I was like, that, that I was accepted in football as a girl, as a woman, and so that was my way of being a footballer. And then becoming a cyclist, it was just, you're just shifting what you know from one sport to another. But the belonging, I think, rather than the identity, now I have a business in cycling here in Mallorca, and it's probably the best place in the world to ride a bike.
Mm.
So, what's come from adversity and a really bad, horrible thing, having to go through so many operations to then kind of have a career, have a business, create a new life is also something incredibly awesome.
Yeah, and I think also it goes back to what you were saying at the beginning when you said about when you go through adversity, you know, maybe it doesn't change you. Maybe it does or doesn't change someone, purely down to their core. That's different for everybody, but it can change your life in
I,
many
I
different.
yeah, I never said it can't change your life. I think it doesn't change you. I think you either have it in you or you don't. And I think that's what I'm trying to get to. That, like I say, I see a lot of people in hospitals, and you never know what other people are going through unless you live their life and you're in their shoes. But I think regardless of having the transplant, I'd try and make people laugh. I'd try and make people feel comfortable, or I'd try and help people. I'm always trying to help people. Now, more so in my later years, I guess since I hit 40, I'm now 44, I've become a little bit more selfish,
Mm.
less selfless, and more, right, what do I want to do? How can I do that? And I think that's healthy, because before it was always about pleasing people and doing things for people. If I don't want to do something now, I say no.
Mm.
I don't necessarily have to give a reason. I'm just polite and I say no, no, thank you. But before, I'd say yes to everything and try and do everything. And I think that's not even related to my illness or anything. I think that's just, as we get older, we become more stubborn, and we learn what actually sparks us. What makes us tick.
We learn a lot more about ourselves.
Oh, for sure, 100%. And like, I look at my life in chapters, and I feel like it was a whole lifetime ago when things happen. Like recently, I had my youngest brother and nephew and sister-in-law over, and I was driving back to the airport. Make sure they leave, and I got a message from my ex-sister-in-law, and she said, "Can I call her?" And I've not spoken to her in maybe 6 or 7 years, and my ex-husband and I divorced 14 years ago. Anyway, I contacted her, and he'd been found dead in a lake. This was 4 weeks ago. And this whole punch bag thing, I think, my goodness, what next? It's almost like laughable. Like, what next? Seriously, if you can pin something on me, what are you going to tell me next? Because my life, it just sounds made up. It sounds like a made up story.
And yet you're here, you're breathing, and I mean, you're doing amazing things, and you've discovered amazing things as well.
Yeah, and from that, I've really met some amazing people, and I think, again, in life, you sift through the things you don't need, the things that bring negative energy, and you're more selective of who you spend time with. And I always say to people, the biggest form of respect in life is time. If you give someone your time, unadulterated time, nothing else, just your time, that is the biggest form of respect. And so many people these days, I see it here, people on holiday. I'm in a beautiful place in Mallorca, and they're walking with their phones and their families, and they're on their phone. And I'm like, there's a sea there, your family here. Breathe it in, soak it up, man. You're here for 1 week, 2 weeks.
Mm.
And yet they can't, or they sit at dinner and on their phones. And okay, I'm on my phone a lot. I live here. But to give someone their time, I think is huge.
Mm.
And I think that's just, again, I think it's just been sort of nailed into us as children. You respect your elders and you respect people, and it's a big big thing.
I think it gives a sense of belonging as well when you're giving someone their time and your time and you're really, really getting it. It does help with belonging because realistically, at the end of the day, we all want to feel, you know, we all want to have a place where we feel wanted and that we belong and whether whatever it might be. And
We want to feel special, you know. We want
yeah,
to,
yeah,
yeah.
we
No,
do.
we do.
We
Like,
do.
I wait.
No, no, and even if that is literally just sitting with somebody for 10, 15, 20 minutes and having their time, it makes you feel that sense of belonging.
Yeah, and that's why I feel like I say, living here is like growing up in the 80s, you know, like I can, I'm very happy on my own. I live on my own. I have two cats. So I'm not on my own, but I could walk down to one of the cafes and sit there on my own, and then a friend will come along and I'll have a coffee and we could be there for 10 minutes, could be there for an hour. But I couldn't do that down the Arndale in Luton. You know what I mean? Couldn't go to the Costa Coffee and guarantee someone will come in. Whereas here, it's like the Cheers bar. Everybody knows your name. Everybody knows who you are. It's a really lovely feeling of belonging. And
Hmm.
maybe I worked with someone years ago from a Caribbean island that I was guiding them, and they said living on an island is two things. It's very it can be very very beautiful, but very very ugly. I said you're under the microscope. Everything is magnified. You know, you see the beauty and everything. You see the best and everything, but then you also see the worst. And I say, but and people say here, oh, everybody knows what you're doing. Everybody knows your business. I said, only if you tell them.
Yeah.
I said, I'm from a big town in Luton, and I don't know what the current population is, but I only know perhaps 1% of the population in Luton, whereas here I probably know 20% of the population of the town. And I said, so it depends on your outlook on life and how you want to be. And, you know, just walking to work along the beach and saying hola to different people and, you know, oh, them asking after my family or, you know, when my mum and dad come, they're not known as their names. Their name is Ottie's mum and dad. You know, hey, Ottie's dad. Hey, Ottie's mum. You know, so they're like, they feel famous. They're like, oh my God, you know, the guy from that restaurant said, hey. I was like, oh, that's really nice. Mm.
That is really nice. And again, it gives people that sense of belonging. Yeah, that's a really nice way of putting it. And then I just want to ask them before we do wrap up. Um, I want to focus it on obviously you and your journey and your story. If there is somebody in a place where they've been told they're going to need a transplant, what would you say to them?
It's going to be a rocky road. It's going to be a challenge. Make a note of everything. Be prepared to go through a lot, but also be prepared to come out of this fighting. Um, I think, oh, you've made me go all goosebumpy as well. I think people aren't told how hard it is
Mm.
because we've usually got a disease that is blooming hard. We don't get told how hard the treatment is because ultimately, like I say, it's a treatment, it's not a cure. Um, and each year, part of my Great Britain transplant team, the wider team, so I represent the cycling team, but we have sports from all over the place. And each year, a good few of them die every single year. And that is the inevitable fact that, you know, last year, a couple of my friends died last week. My friend Nick died. And it's one of those where it is hard, but it's better than the alternative of dying now. You know, so be prepared. It's going to be a long, tough journey, but with the right team behind you. And I don't just mean family, friends. I mean medical staff, education, everything. You will get the best out of what you can. It's not, you know, rainbows and sunshines, and it is hard and it's ongoing hard as well. And I think without making it sound like I say doom and gloom, the likes of Andrew Cole, the ex-footballer, I don't think he was perhaps told that. And when people who inspired me was like Jonah Lomu, the ex-New Zealand rugby player. He had a kidney transplant a year before me. And, you know, you look at the stature of him, he passed away in 2015, but I don't know if you remember him, massive New Zealand All Blacks. And he was huge. And I was like, well, if this guy, you know, look at him. And so I kind of, people always say to me that, you know, when I was a teacher, oh, young kids need people who look like them. And I say, bollocks, do they? You need someone you just aspire to be.
Yeah.
I had Sally Gunnell, and again, you probably can't remember who she is because you're young, but she came into my shop and she won the Barcelona '92 Olympic hurdles, and she came into my shop, and I was so over the moon to see Sally Gunnell because she was like one of my aspirational people. Her and Linford Christie and all of these '90s stars. And I don't think if a youngster wants to be, you know, inspired by someone, you don't have to look like them, you don't have to be like them. But with transplantation, with illness, with injuries, if you can see someone else do it
Hmm.
and you can see the journey, I think you can get through it. But you need everything, all those jigsaw pieces, you need to be in place, and contingency plans, and what happens if this happens, or what happens when that happens, and really educate yourself. So if someone was to just, find out now, I'd say learn everything, become the student of your illness, become the student of your sport, learn everything. Um, because then you're kind of armored with as many different weapons as you can have,
Hmm.
and you're ready. I think ignorance sometimes is bliss for sure, but I think it's better to go in there learning and knowing more information when you go and see a surgeon, when you go and see a transplant coordinator. When you see your family upset for you, that's hard.
Mm.
And that you're never prepared for. And I had an interview with the Human Tissue Authority to make sure my mom wasn't pressurizing me to accept her kidney, and I wasn't forcing her or paying her to give me her kidney. So all these things you don't even know about. So
Mm.
there always needs to be like a step-by-step guide. And you have a transplant coordinator, and they're usually wonderful people. We had a lady called Sandra Cruikshank, an Irish lady, amazing. But they're not going through it. They're a nurse, a doctor, they're someone who's trained to do it, but they haven't done it.
Mm.
So speak to people that have been through, like yourself, when you had your operation. You've probably since researched different people who've had similar injuries, or researched the protocol of rehabilitation and things. And I think that gives you somewhat strength in going forward.
It does, and you're right, actually. And when I hear people have had very similar injuries and operations to myself now, I'm fascinated by how and
Yeah.
why, and then their recovery and their journey. If I see someone on crutches, if I see someone in a knee brace, I want to know. It's so interesting. I want to know.
Yeah, I also as well think, and I always think this, there's always someone worse off than you. Always. Always in life. I've got a very good friend of mine, Josh Bodgy. He's a triple amputee. He got blown up in Afghan, and he's the world's first scuba paddy diving instructor who's a triple amputee. Now, this guy's got one left arm, no legs, no right arm, and yet he is just unbelievable. He works with Invictus Games, and like he's like, oh, I've got a bit of a headache, and I'm like, bloody hell, you got no legs and no arm, and
Yeah.
he come to me for physio, and he said, being massaged by you is more painful than being blown up. I'm like, Jesus, Josh, thanks, mate. So there's always someone who will make you smile, make you laugh, is worse off than you. Hey, and we're here for one time only. It's no dress rehearsal.
No, there isn't a dress rehearsal, you're right. And whether it's what you just said about Josh's story or even your story, and I guess even mine, I wouldn't be here right now talking to you if I hadn't.
No, no,
And I just wouldn't, because I would
no.
never have started this podcast. Um, but I think when you look at anyone's story, you may lose parts of you, or dreams you had, or wishes you had, or plans you had. You may lose part of you and the plan you had for your life. You may, but you never know what can come.
Yeah. See, I just think it's just different twists and turns to
Yeah.
tales. I think I was very much brought up that you grow up, you go to university, you find a job, you
Mhm.
fall in love, you get married, you have children, you live happily ever after.
Yeah, I was actually told something similar when I was younger, and I turned to that person and was like, no.
But I think now, if I ask my nieces or nephews, and they range between like 11 and 25, what their story is, it was completely different.
Yeah.
So from someone who's 44 to say my 11-year-old nephew Sydney, they're completely different stories. So I think this whole generational thing is different. And I really think if you can do it on your own and then do things with people too, and share happiness, I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, definitely sharing the happiness and not being so 100% just one way or the highway, because you,
No,
you really got absolutely no idea what twists and turns are going to take you into actually some of the most amazing things that could ever happen.
Oh, and yeah, I'm a huge believer in karma and fate,
Hmm.
and things happen at the right time for the right reason. And even though I've had some terrible things happen, I still feel that the pathway I'm on is very twisty and turny, but it's my pathway and no one else's.
And I believe my accident happened for me. I believe I was meant to have it.
Yeah,
So
it's yeah, it's undescribable. It's very difficult to tell people because, like I say, that if you could wind back the clock, would you still let it happen, or could you change it like the butterfly effect? I guess you just let life be.
I've been asked that question, and if I could go back and I could tell Talia of nearly 5 years ago about what's going to happen, or don't go down the road that day, or I wouldn't even let her see me. I would sit back and I would watch her have the accident.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Mm. Which is
But
which is a really crazy thing to say, and I'm sure people are like, what? But I just, yeah, I would watch her have the accident because I think if I had told myself or even been like, have it, but be careful,
don't have such a big accident.
I'd be like, no, okay, I'm not gonna do it, I'm not gonna do it, I'm not gonna do it. Whereas, you know, yeah, I needed to have it for whatever reasons I needed to have it.
Yeah, no, and it's quite funny because my three older brothers, they always sort of comment on how strong I am and what you do and how you get through things. And I said, yeah, but you guys have helped me do that. By you being big brothers and being annoying and being lovely and teasing me and joking and it's you're forming who you are as a younger age. To deal with the things you come up against.
Yeah, and yeah, I like that. I guess I've never thought of it in that way, as we were saying about your character and how you are built, and when you can, when tough things happen and you face challenges, how you get through them. But yeah, it's a lot of the people that you've grown up with or you've been around, or the people that your support network is, you take little pieces from them. You are
I
we
think
are
so.
we are mosaics of every single person we've met and
Yeah,
everything we've ever done. And
we
that's,
are. We're a product. Yeah,
yeah,
we're a
and
product of everything we've experienced.
100%, and it genuinely does continue to shape us. So you're right, when you have that strength inside of you, yeah, it's you that has that strength, but it's probably come from lots of other people that have helped give it to you as well.
I 100% believe that. Everyone is part of you, and that's what makes you who you are.
Mm, yeah, I agree, I love that. So is there anything else you want to share today?
What I can think of. Thank you for having me on your show.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for being here today. Life will knock us down, sometimes hard and sometimes more than once. And when it feels impossible, know that your story isn't over yet. Sometimes when everything is falling apart, it's really falling into place. You have the power to rise, to heal, to make magic, and to evolve. And you have the power inside you. We all do. You have the power to get back up.